Hi everyone, this is Jonathan Berry from Accelatis. Thank you for joining this 21-minute webinar on how Accelatis can help with your Oracle EPM migration. Given the 21-minute format, we won't answer questions during the session, but if you do have questions, just post them to the GoToWebinar questions section and we'll make sure to get back to you. And then shortly after the webinar, we'll be posting this on the Accelatis YouTube channel. So for agenda, we'll give you a quick background on who Accelatis is, and we'll talk about what our role is in the migration process, how we can help with the migration. We'll go over an example validation report, and then we'll talk about controls that you can put in place going forward after you've completed your migration. For a little bit of background on who we are, again, my name is Jonathan Berry. I was an early member of the HFM development team, and I was responsible for the engineering team through 2008 before founding Accelatis. And what we've done is we formed a team and company around building a solution to help Oracle EPM administrators. So our developers, technologists, and product managers and support people are all former Hyperion folks. And really what our mission in life is to provide the software solution that helps Oracle EPM administrators get better insight and control into their Oracle EPM deployment. And when it comes to upgrades and new applications, there's really two things that we cover. The two most important things are, first of all, mitigating risks. So reducing the risks to better ensure success of a project, and ultimately reduce the time and costs along the way. So here we have a simplified timeline of a typical migration. And it starts with preparing for the migration, whether that's getting requirements, getting funding, all of these elements. Then ultimately, you will install likely a new hardware. Then you will go through a phase of configuring the system. You'll upgrade your applications or rework your applications. Then there will be a period of user validation and eventually rollout. And what we're going to show now are all the touch points where Accelatis can come in and simplify the process. Again, better ensuring successful rollout. So in the dark blue, we're going to talk about the things that Accelatis can do on the old environment, or in likely rather. So first of all, before you even do the migration, we can baseline the existing environment. So this is taking a reading of the performance of all of your key user activities. SmartView, reports, planning business rules, S-based calcs, HFM forms, and so on. And we'll talk about why this is going to become really important in the new environment. But what we want to do is create a transactional history log of everything that users have done over a period of time. And hopefully that's over a budgeting cycle or a financial close where we really understand the peak usage of the environment. The next thing we're going to do is, again, capture real user activity. So first we're taking a snapshot of how things perform, and we're also going to capture what users are doing and what percentage they're doing. So we not only want to understand how fast things are performing, like any given report or form, but we also want to understand the pattern of user activity. So over the course of a close or a cycle, when is data loading the most, or calculations or reporting the most? We really want to understand exactly what users are doing and when they're doing it. And we want to basically take a snapshot of the configuration. So we want to look at all of the server and tuning settings. We're going to look at hardware settings, operating system settings, and especially things like customized tuning settings, which may need to be applied to the new environment. Again, most people will have some type of record of what they've done, but often things get missed along the way. So what Accelatis is doing is taking an automated snapshot of all of these configuration settings. So now in the darker blue, we're going to talk about what Accelatis can do in the new environment. So once the new the new installation is created, Accelatis will do something called validating the new installation. So we want to go in and make sure that all the proper files were installed, that everything is consistent across servers. So doing a lot of things that you could do manually, we can automate, saving a great deal of time. Then after that's done, whoever's performing your migration will configure the system, and that's applying various tuning settings or any other configuration changes. And here again, we're going to validate the configuration. So we're going to go in and look at and ensure that things were done consistently across servers and done in the right order. And we'll have a slides on a few of these things after this slide to talk in detail about what this means. But we're really doing a lot of things that could lead to intermittent issues down the road. We're cutting it off right in the beginning and ensuring that the configuration was done properly. And once the applications have been migrated, we can integrate performance testing. And what Accelatis has to offer is a performance testing suite that's basically configured for Oracle out of the box. So we can do in a very short amount of time, which would take otherwise a great deal of time with other tools. So we can shrink that whole cycle down quite a bit, enabling you to do more types of testing in the new environment. Then, once after the performance testing is done and we've done user validation, we can really, this culminates into a single environment comparison report where we're going to compare the old environment to the new environment and have one single document which details clearly that everything's been migrated the way that you expect and that performance is as good or better in the new environment, hopefully. And then after the rollout, we can put controls in place so that in the new production environment, you are aware of any changes that are being made. So to cut off any issues that might arise from configuration changes or installation changes or things like this. Again, we'll talk specifically about what that is as we go forward. So first, let's talk about capturing activities. What Accelatis can do is in real time capture what users are doing on the system. So some user activity exists in logs, but a lot of it doesn't. So we can capture everything that users are doing from opening a report to a planning form to someone running S-based SmartView. We can capture who's doing it, exactly what they're doing, what the document name is. We understand how long it took, and even down to the level of detail of how many cells someone's refreshing in SmartView. And we build up this, again, transactional database of user activity. We can also take data ported from logs. So some system type activities like S-based calcs or HFN consolidations, which may not have been leveraged over the web, are going to show up in the logs. And we can port that into our database so that we'll have one big picture of everything that users have done over a period of time. And again, where this is going is once we have this transactional history, we can leverage it in our new environment. And we'll talk about how we're going to do that. But the important thing is to get a snapshot of how users actually leverage the existing environment. What we want to do is actually capture configuration settings. So here we'll do everything from hardware settings, your operating system settings, your file versions. Again, file versions are really important when it comes to making sure that servers are consistent or that settings are consistent across servers. So that if you have 4 planning servers, make sure the same files exist on each server. Also, everything we're talking about can also apply to comparing environments of the same version. So a QE environment to a production environment. So to make sure that file installation on QE matches production exactly, and that when you're doing patching and things like this, that everything's consistent. So we'll capture the file versions of all of your installation files. We'll also look at customized tool settings, and even the application settings we're going to capture. And this is creating a snapshot of the old environment that we're going to leverage when we look at the new environment to make sure that everything that we might have customized in the legacy environment has been migrated if it's applicable. Then we want to validate the new installation. And this is what I was talking about, where if you have multiple servers of the same type, a typical problem that we used to see all the time in development was that intermittent things are really hard to track down because they only happen every few days and they're not consistent and they're not reproducible. Often these things came down to inconsistencies across servers, whether it was a file version or perhaps it was a tuning setting. And what will happen is, depending on how load balancing is set up and these sorts of things, the problem won't be reproducible because you have to make sure that you're getting the right server with the same timing for that particular condition to manifest itself. So what Accelatis can do is it can go through and ensure that the environments are consistent, that the same settings exist across all servers of the same type, and eliminate any inconsistencies that are going to show themselves down the road and become very difficult to trace back because they're going to have very varying symptoms. So they're very hard to troubleshoot once they've made it out into the deployment. Next, we're going to look at performance testing. And when we talk about performance testing, again, Accelatis has out of the box pre-configured performance tests, so we can literally do in minutes what would take with other tools to do days or weeks, because all we need to test a financial report, for example, are things like the server name, the report name, and the credentials. We don't need to record anything. We don't need to parameterize anything. It's just plugging in a couple config settings and we're ready to run. So we can get there very quickly. And we have several other webinars that talk about our performance testing capabilities. But the important thing, though, is that you can get going really quickly, which gives you more time to do the value-add performance testing. So you're actually spending your time testing and not configuring. And with the extra time, you can do a wider array of tests. So it's not just stress testing. You can do stress testing, concurrency testing, longevity testing, baseline testing. There's a lot of things that can really give you insight into how your environment performs, and Accelatis can get you there very quickly. We can also go through and baseline every artifact in the system. So an artifact is any form or report or document. And with the tool, we can do it in what's called sequential mode. So we can actually go through your repository, get a list of all your documents, all your calcs, your forms, reports, and so on, and execute them one by one. So we can simulate them. We'll simulate as if the user is running them, and we'll create a whole record of how long each document takes to execute. And then what we can do is we can do it from the old environment and the new environment, and be able to show you how the new environment compares to the old environment. We had one client who had 2,000 financial reports, and they were doing a migration. And what we did was we ran our simulation tool against all 2,000 in an automated way, so there's very little work to get up and do this. And they were moving to, I think, 11.121, which they had much greater hardware, so we expected everything to pretty much be faster. And what we found was a handful of reports, maybe like 5 or 6, were slower out of 2,000, so a very small number. And they were considerably slower, and our partner who was involved was able to focus on those 5 or 6 and get in and understand that there was an issue with the POV and that it was affected by a rule that caused these particular reports to run slowly. If they hadn't done it this way, they eventually would have found out over time when users happened to run them. What this enabled our client to do was identify the problem reports and fix them before the environment was rolled out to the user community. So the next thing we can do with performance testing is leveraging that transactional database we talked about. So in the old environment, we can capture everything that users are doing. Who's doing it, how long it took, what document they were running. And what we can do is we can replay that information in the new environment. So we have, let's say, 11.113 environment, and we record the last financial close. So we know everything that happened over the financial close. We can feed that into the Accelatis simulation tool and replay it in an 11.123 environment and really understand very closely how that environment is going to respond without ever having to think about designing a test. So we don't have to think around designing what would make a test. And what I've seen is that there's a lot of powerful tools out there. However, if you design a test that's not realistic, the results are really not actionable because they don't apply to how your environment is going to be leveraged. But with Accelatis, we can take actual activity, replay it in the new environment, and along the way, we can do things like amplify it or shorten the duration. So you might take an 11.113 financial close and amplify the activity by 50%, and then replay it in the new environment and really see how the new environment is going to respond and understand how the response times in the new environment with the amplified activity are going to look like when the real users get into the system. So capture activity on one end, replay it in the other, giving you as close to an apples-to-apples comparison as you could expect from an environment like this. So the next thing is really what this all is culminating to, which is a single document showing or comparing the environments. And the environment compare report is going to cover server settings, application settings, all your customized product tuning things like your memory settings. It's also going to look at files if they apply. And then we'll look at all the artifacts. So not just your configuration, but we're going to look at the documents. Did the documents get migrated, for example? Um, and what was the performance in one environment versus another? And another thing along the way is that a lot of people, when they do migrations, they really want to understand what documents do I have to migrate. And because Accelatis is tracking what documents are actually being used, we can also tell you what documents have not been used. So if you don't want to invest in migrating reports that have not been run in the last 90 days, Accelatis can tell you that. It'll tell you what ones have been used in what quantities and which reports have not even been run in the last quarter or the last 180 days. So what we'll do here is I'm actually going to flip over to a environment compare report. This is an example where we took data from an 11.113 to 11.122 upgrade in this case. And again, it's going to go through all of the categories that I discussed for all products, whether it's S-based planning, HFM, reports, FPM, and so on. And it starts with tuning settings. And format, it's going to show you the various tuning settings. Here we're looking at some of the JVM settings for planning. And it's going to show you what the setting was in the old environment and what it is in the new environment. And it's going to flag anything that doesn't match. And in this case, the setting is a path. So it might be that these settings are intentionally changed from one version to another. So it's what we expect, and that's cool. At least this is going to tell us explicitly what is the same and what's different. So it's going to go through your tuning settings, application settings. Here's HFM settings, and we can see here's one setting that's different. Again, maybe this is by design, or maybe it's because we forgot to apply a customized tuning setting. Whatever the case might be, this is going to draw your attention to what is the same, and more importantly, what's different. It'll also look at your application settings so you can ensure that if your intention was to rebuild your applications in the same structure, that's been done. So we'll look at all of the statistics about how many base members we have, as well as any properties on the applications. Then we're going to get into documents. So these, I call them documents or artifacts. It really applies to anything that's like a form or a report or a calc. And what it's going to do is it's going to see that the document exists in both the old environment and the new environment. And in this case, it doesn't exist in the new environment, so we flag it and we say, hey, it's missing. And maybe that's by design or maybe it's not. Here's a case where there was a document that was added that did not exist in the old environment. What we'll also do is we're not just checking to see that the environments exist in both places, we're comparing them. So here's a case where a drill-through form exists in both environments, but it's different. Something changed along the way. And this becomes also really important if you have a QE and prod environment that you're trying to compare. And we see all the time our client will say that something is really fast in QE or dev and it's slow in prod. Well, maybe someone either on purpose or inadvertently went in and added a member list to a form. So now it's retrieving more data, let's say. This is a report that's going to be able to go in an automated way, tell you whether these documents are really the same. Do they match across environments? So then we'll get into, and again, we'll do this for S-based planning, reports, HFM, and so on. What I want to show you next is that we can also track performance across environments. So here is financial reports. And I gave the example of the 2000 financial report. So this is kind of an example of that. And what Accelatis will do is in each environment in an automated way, it's going to go in and simulate every report in the database if you elect to do this. And it can either do a single run performance test or an average. So you might want to run it 3 to 5 times and take an average. But what it's going to do is it's going to give you a value of how long each particular report takes to run in each environment. Here's the 11.113 environment, here's 11.122, and it'll traffic like the differences. So at the end of the day, you're going to have a report that's going to call out any significant differences. So you'll know which reports are performing more slowly in the new environment versus the old environment, so you can focus on the problems and not invest time in the things that are okay. So it's going to be one report that you can walk away and say, everything's been migrated the way we expected. All of our custom tuning settings have been moved over, our documents have been moved over, and our performance is hopefully as good or better than in our old environment. Let's go back to so now we've done the migration. We have this pretty document which is telling us what's the same, what's different, so we're comfortable with rolling it forward. Now what you need to do, you're in your new production environment. You're comfortable with everything that's been done, and the production environment is locked down, or maybe certain products have been locked down. Maybe HFM is still in development, but planning and S-Base are in production. Nothing should be changed. What Accelatis can do now is put controls in place to track any changes to configuration. So what you're ultimately going to have is an automated versioned history of your configuration. So you'll be able to go back in time to any point and see exactly what your configuration looked like at any point in time. Because what Accelatis will do is it's going to detect when changes are made, and it's going to record them. So regardless of how the change is made, directly in like the registry or in the database or through the EPM configuration tool, Accelatis will detect that something changed, and it makes a record of it. So you can get a report on what's changed over time. You can even be alerted to changes as they happen. So you could get an email that says that your planning JVM memory size changed. Again, maybe you're aware of it, that's cool, but at least you know that all of these configuration changes are being detected and recorded, and you can go back and look at your configuration at any point in time. The other thing we can do is alert on problems in the configuration. So maybe changes occurred that you expected, but maybe they only happened on 2 of the 3 servers. And this is something that we see all the time, where because making these changes can be a manual process without a tool like Accelatis, it's very easy to not do them consistently, or apply change and then try to back it out because it didn't do what you were planning, and maybe not backing it out on all the servers. So we can alert you to things like servers getting out of sync or changes occurring. We can also audit and alert you to applications, so whether it's your S-Base outlines, HFM metadata or rules or report definitions, even EPM security and a few other things. Accelatis can give you a versioned history of all of these elements. So you can always go back in time and see exactly what your outlines look like, your report definitions look like, or even your security. What did it look like on this particular date and time? And if you're in production, it should be locked down. We can proactively alert you to changes that have taken place. So I should let you know that, again, our job at Accelatis is to augment the process you have in place. It's to give you a higher chance of success while reducing the time and cost spent. And often, again, during an upgrade process, people are really too busy to think about anything but getting it done. So what I can say is we offer really 2 kind of options. One option is that all the things that Accelatis can do to shrink the process, we can do with our own services folks, or we can offer you the tool and you can apply it yourself. So just know that if you feel that this is functionality that's important and valuable, but you're just too busy to think about it, just know that you can still get all the value without having to really do any work, because our team can come in and do it. So I want to thank you for joining. This webinar will be posted. And just remember, the takeaway is we're here to augment the process you have, give you a better chance of success, shrink the costs and time involved in the process. And again, we can do it in a self-service type of way, or our team can come in and really help you along. So if you have any questions, please send them either to myself or Ed DeLisi. Our email addresses are here, or enter them into the webinar question section, and we'll be happy to get back to you. Thank you for joining.